Hey everybody, this is TJ Cates with Nashville Entertainment Weekly. I have one of my hometown friends,
Mark Grisham.
Mark Grisham, everybody. And the crowd goes wild.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me, TJ. I
Hey,
really
man.
appreciate it.
Thanks so much for coming. So we're going to talk about you as an author, and we're going to talk about what brought you to be a writer.
All right.
So what was the first thing you did? I know we went to the same high school, and it wasn't the most challenging. We talked about, we kind of had the basics back then in small town Mississippi.
Didn't get a lot of help when you got on to college there, so I had to change my major from business to history because I didn't take any math in high school. So once in college, man, I started reading Civil War novel after Civil War novel. Just kind of caught fire with it. That's all I wanted to do. Which led eventually to running into David Donaldson, the guy who wrote the book with it.
Hey, David.
Hey, David.
I
Hey,
called,
brother.
I called David this morning.
Okay, good. But anyway, David and I have been buddies since we were kids. He got educated, went off and
He
got
did get educated.
got a master's and a PhD. Man, he's smart. Did a lot of writing, and that was his form of therapy because he had a Christian counseling ministry, and his way to get the demons out of his head was to go sit in a corner and write for a few hours. And I was going through a rough time, had a bad marriage, and was going through a custody fight for my daughters, and just having some hard times. And David mentioned to me what he did for relaxation, and that was writing books. And we'd sit and talk forever as I was getting counseling. I needed it. I still do, probably. I guess everybody does.
I think everybody does.
Everybody does sooner or later, whether you want to or not. But he would ask me a Civil War question, and I'd give him a 30-minute answer, and he'd be like, man, you ought to write a book, just kind of blowing it off. And I'd always thought about it because who my brother is. I thought maybe I was the next great thing to happen, but it didn't happen. But anyway, David asked me one time.
It didn't happen yet.
Well, that's
I think
true.
it's going to happen.
Hang in there. We'll never quit. But he asked me about mental health one day because that's his background, how they dealt with mentally ill people during that era. And I did not have an answer for him. And so a little light bulb went off in both of our heads. So we started doing research and came up with kind of a theme for the book, especially for his characters, and it was Bedlam South. That's the name of the book. It's a nickname for a fictitious mental institution outside of Richmond during the Civil War where they tried their best to treat mentally ill people. And it was brutal. The scenes had to be heavily edited just because of what they were doing to these poor souls because they were clueless. They didn't know what infection was in the blood, so they sure didn't know what made the mind do bad things. But it was a fun journey, just learning a lot because I thought I knew everything about the Civil War, which nobody does. It's like reading the Bible, you don't know all of it, but it was a cool turn. Something nobody ever done before, kind of a different type of war.
Basically, it's not about the Civil War as much. It's like what happens with soldiers once they leave the war.
David,
and they were so young. They were talking about 13, 14,
boys.
15-year-old kids.
Boys.
And all they knew was their small little area, and all of a sudden they're battling and shooting people. They don't know why or what's happening.
Well, and they would join the army with their buddies, their brothers, their cousins, kids they grew up with. And you get in a bad place on the battlefield, man, you could watch everybody you knew just get blown to bits. Which leads us to post-traumatic stress. It was first diagnosed during the Civil War, and they originally called it a soldier's heart, and it was used in a court-martial hearing for a Union soldier who fled the battlefield. They said he was overcome with a soldier's heart, and he was set free. So, anyway, but those are David's characters. Since he had the mental illness or mental therapy background, he kind of went with those. My main characters are two brothers from Mississippi who have been.
Kind of like you and John.
Yeah, well, they're only 2 years apart as opposed to 6. But the older brother's been in the war. The little brother just idolizes him and can't wait till he can turn 17 and go kill some bluebellies and win the war right quick. And they're joined right before they head to Gettysburg, and all heck breaks loose out there. And he finds out pretty quick it's not all fun and games, even though they tried to warn him all the way to Gettysburg. Keep your head down and do what you're told, and you might just survive. But kind of talks about their stories. Talks about them. These old rough, tough soldiers who hadn't had a bath in a month get a letter from home and they'll weep like a small child just because they heard from somebody back home.
Yeah.
Stories like that. Billy's older brother, Billy Gibson, is one bad dude, and he loves to fist fight, and he does it all the time. He's very good at it, and I won't give the story away, but that plays into the book too there. But just a lot of fun.
So it's very character driven.
Yeah, I'd always wondered what it would be like to be in the Lee's army because in those days they didn't have sports heroes. You know, their heroes were soldiers, and very little media. They might get a stray newspaper every now and then, and they would read about what happened in a big battle. And this kid just idolized his brother and Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson and all these guys that he read about because they were kicking butt in 1862 and 1863. They were just dominating the Union armies, even though they were half the size of them. And there's a scene where this kid's on a railroad flat car and he rolls into Robert E. Lee's army, and all he can see for miles is just tents and fires and wagons and cannons and men drilling, and it had to be something amazing to be that kid. And I've always often wondered what it would be like. And then I got to write a story about it, make a character of it. It was pretty cool. So anyway,
So that's good. That's really good. So let's talk about the book itself, where people can buy that.
the Amazon has a few, but if you buy them from me for $20, I'll sign them and autograph them.
That's a pretty good deal.
Any way you want, and ship them to you anywhere in the country.
We're going to put up a link. I've got to build a page for him. We're going to do that.
Okay.
Y'all be sure and check this social media post, and we're going to give you a way to connect with him directly, not so much on his personal page, but on his professional page. And then he and David have another book that place where you can go and you can log on.
BedlamSouth.com is our website. You can buy the books through there.
And we'll put the link up here so you can actually go buy a copy, and you'll sign it and you'll mail it to
Yes,
them.
sir. Absolutely.
And you do book signings.
I didn't for a long time in Alabama. I lived there 5.5 years, and I didn't do a single. Well, I didn't do any.
Robert Dexter's watching. I'm
Oh,
watching
Rob.
the names pop up. Dolph Crafton said, "Is this the same book you and David watched?"
Yes,
So
yes.
that's what I like about live videos. We get to see everybody gets to interact.
Okay.
And we have a lady that's also a book writer, and she said she has this book.
Okay.
So it's interesting
Good.
to watch.
Good. I hope you enjoyed it.
So you're blowing up at this very moment.
Well, good. Good. I need to blow up. So this is my first time to do this. So
I have a friend in
please
Australia,
bear with us.
Gus, who loves America and loves the South, and we all signed an American flag. He's in Australia right now, and he's watching.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Hello to Australia. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's good what we do as far as how we connect on social media. She just put your website. Thank you, Cindy. She just added your website. If
Thank
anybody
you.
has questions, you can click on there and order. But it's really interesting to me the way that you bring the light that we grew up in the same small town.
Yes.
And it was a very small town. And I don't know that the history lessons taught is exciting because I watch a lot of History Channel and documentaries and things like that. I'm trying to find out where you got your inspiration and where your love from history.
One of my earliest memories as a child, I had a set of Civil War soldiers, the Rebs and the Yanks, and I played with them until there wasn't any. They were little wooden soldiers, and I played with them so much you couldn't tell the Rebs from the Yanks, so they wore the paint off of them. And then I went to college, like I said, and started reading more about the war, more about the diplomacy, why it didn't have to happen, and why it did happen. Everybody says, everybody has a reason why it happened, but bottom line, it was all about money, as everything usually is. But it was just something I picked up in college, and then when I got out and got married and settled down, and kind of looking for a simple life, I just started reading book after book after book, and I was hooked, and I still am.
Now, John, you and John, did y'all ever talk about writing as kids? Did y'all ever write little
We used to
plays or
joke.
do anything like that?
Well, it's kind of funny. We used to joke back when I started playing college football. I did it about as dumb as you can do it, by quitting and transferring and quitting and transferring.
Yeah, because you're a big dude, man.
And we used to joke that I was going to write a book called How Not to Play College Football. And John was going to help me edit it and do the book for me. And we kind of laughed it off as a family joke. Little did we know what was coming down the road for John. So that was kind of ironic. So,
And his are more legal. Is he
Legal
still writing that?
pretty much. Legal thrillers. The Time to Kill was his first one, obviously. 30 books. The guy's written 30 books, which just blows my mind. I don't know how you got 30 books worth of knowledge in your brain. I mean, that's a lot of books, a lot of characters, a lot of scenes, a lot of everything. But he's good. You got to give it to him. The guy's
When you
good.
write, I think it's kind of like a flow, like we're in Nashville right now, and it's about the flow and the creativity, and we hear songwriters talk about that. They said they'll sit down with one idea or one hook, and before they know it, they've got a song written in a few 15 minutes. But we have a lot of people at the Opry that say, don't share it on live Facebook, don't share that song yet.
Yeah.
Get there and tweak it and let your heart roll on it. And I think that makes y'all successful because I like the way that you and David Donaldson have a good work ethic together, and he brought his psychiatry
And discipline.
his discipline, and you brought your creativity and your really knack at people that you imagined in your head, and y'all basically did a co-write.
We did. He would have a scene, I would have a scene. We had to make it sound like one person wrote the book, even though both of our names were on there. So David did most of the editing on there. And I would send him scenes, and he would send it back and say, this is first person, second person, or third person, or all three of them, so redo it, and I would. But it was kind of funny because David, we're totally different. David plans before he writes a scene. John's the same way. Most writers are. They'll plan out everything that's going to happen in the scene and just kind of fill it in. I don't have any idea. I'd go cut the grass and be thinking of a scene I needed to write, and by the time I got back in the house and started writing, something else comes out. I might write 2 or 3 scenes at one time that had nothing to do with the original scene I wanted to write. So I don't know where this crap comes from. I had a great grandmother who wrote poetry. Nothing ever famous, but she had a huge book of poetry my mother showed me one time. And she used to tell my mother she would wake up in the middle of the night and have a poem in her head. Mm-hmm. And she could not go back to sleep until she wrote the poem down.
You got to put it on paper, man.
And she did that all of her life.
I woke up a couple of weeks ago and I was singing a song I'd never heard before, and I got up and I wrote it, and now I've written a song, and I'm doing a co-write with one of Nashville's big songwriters, and we're putting it together that somebody else can sing because I can't sing.
Yeah,
but that's good that your mind works when you're not just at a desk.
Yeah,
I think that.
And riding down the road, I don't. People get in the car and go somewhere. They got the radio going. I still like to ride in total silence and just let my brain, what's left of it, find something to write about. You know, I'll see a field out there and try to wonder what it would look like if it was covered in Confederate soldiers or dead Confederate soldiers or something like that. And I don't know. It's a lot of fun because you never know where you're going to go.
Let's talk about growing up in South Haven. What's your first memory, and when did y'all move down there?
We moved there July the 1st, 1967. Staunton Drive, we were 2 streets over from South Memphis, which was not Memphis at the time. It was actually a little community called Whitehaven, which was later annexed by Memphis.
We talked earlier about all the good times we had in Whitehaven.
Yeah, we could ride our bikes to the malls up there. Man, you go up there now, you get your head blown off if you sit at the red light too long. But it's a different world, as most major cities are. They've changed everywhere.
But it was a sweet time. It was kind of like a Mayberry situation.
It was.
We had the J.C. pool.
We did. We had no cops, so we got to run wild. We had DeSoto County cops that would come
we
through
ran
every
as
now.
wild as you can as a kid. We probably weren't as wild as they are now, but we had our bikes. That's all it took.
Yeah, but then after we got older, we hung out in the parking lots all night and raised all kinds of cane. And
where was your choice parking lot at?
the big one in front of Safeway, Shakey's, Safeway, got a lot of.
Where's Safeway?
Used to be, turned it into a Cecil's later on, right there across the street from the Wendy's.
You know, my dad.
And the big tree in the park.
My dad's favorite. We used to run around that tree as kids.
Yes.
But one of my funny stories is my dad bought a brand new big 4-wheel drive Blazer, and we'd been with a bunch of firemen down at a football game, Arkansas, where it's playing in Jackson, and we came back, and Dad was in bed, and I borrowed his Blazer, and I was coming through that parking lot, and they had put some cross ties, and I leaped the truck. The whole front end's gone. The bumper, I thought I could drive it home, and I couldn't. So I left it there, and I woke up the next morning, and my dad was gone, and his truck. And Mr. Gossett was nice enough to give him an older rental car, and I had a brand new Silverado. I'm like, Dad, please drive my truck. Don't drive. They said, nope. It makes me think of what you did every morning. I get in this old car. So that tree has a lot of stories behind it. I think they're making some kind of monument, or they're doing some kind of dedication to the tree. Darren Musselwhite, the current mayor.
Really?
Last time I talked to them, I think that they're working on that.
I think we all played Pee Wee football, and as when you screwed up in Pee Wee football, you had to run to the tree all the way down to the end of the hill. It seemed like so far away, and it was a long way when we were little.
It was probably good for us, kept us healthy.
Yeah.
Because you talk about exercising now, you're in good shape, and you said your thing right now is the bicycle.
I do ride a bicycle. I do the cardio. I don't like to lift and all that because it hurts. I never did like to lift, and now that I'm pushing 50, it hurts even worse.
Pushing 50 behind us.
Pushing 50 behind me, yeah.
Dolph Crafton, can you say hi to him real quick?
How you doing, Dolph? Good to see you, brother.
He's excited that we're here.
Well, good.
I didn't really promote that you're going to be here because I kind of wanted to give everybody a surprise.
Okay.
Now, what else are you working on? What's coming up for you?
Oh, David and I had written 2 other books. Unfortunately, our publisher went broke, and when you try to sell a book to someone else, your second novel, they look at how your first novel did. And because of our publisher going bankrupt, our first novel did not do very well. So we didn't get many offers on our second and third books, and we pretty much eventually gave up, went back to our day jobs. I bought all the remaining inventory that Borders had before they went out of business, and I started doing book signings and book shows and Christmas shows and gun shows and Civil War shows, and anybody that would let me sit there and try to sell them a book, I did it. And after a couple of years of that, we could tell we were not going to get where we wanted to, so we kind of gave up. And I got a really good job offer in Birmingham. We moved off in January of 2011 and pretty much dropped the book and everything else until we moved to Tennessee a couple of years ago and started doing some book signings up in this area and have been very successful. And just TJ got a hold of me. I was doing a book signing.
Cindy Schul.
Cindy Schul.
Let's give her a
Thank
shout
you, Cindy.
out. Thanks for connecting us.
Yeah.
I didn't know you lived up here or close by. What's in an hour?
It's 2 hours.
East?
Across the- yeah,
Oh,
two hours east on the way
Do
to
I need to
Knoxville.
give you some gas money or something?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Don't you live closer?
No, I'm good.
I
I'm
apologize,
good.
man.
No.
We spent about an hour talking about everything before we got on camera, and I'm kind of glad we did.
Yeah.
It was kind of
We
fun.
could talk all day, I would imagine there.
That's okay. We'll just start a we'll start a podcast.
There you go. Sounds good.
Let's talk about right now how people. Well, I'm going to put your like page and we have your website, because if you have a bookstore and you want to promote him, and all my friends at Fox 13, Channel 3, Channel 5, and Eric and everybody here in Nashville, if you'd like to have him as a guest, we'd like to help you promote your music, because what I'm thinking is increase your content. We talked about working with our PR company too, but I think people need to know that you're out there writing, and it's not just legal dramas or legal novels. It's something that, does it all touch on history?
Most of it's historical fiction. Of course, you make the characters up. We followed the last 2 years of the Civil War, all the battles and all the timeline was proper. That's how it becomes historical fiction. It's actually the history that we live through. It's just the characters are made up. If you do have a real character in there, you make an imaginary conversation he might have had, so you don't plagiarize yourself in case that conversation never happened. But like my soldiers, I could look up the rosters for the regiments they were in, the Mississippi regiments they were in, to see if there was a person in that regiment by the name that I used, and that's how I got the regiment that I formed was from Calhoun County, and there were no Gibson brothers in Calhoun County that fought for those particular regiments, so I covered my butt that away.
A lot of research.
That was the fun part, because I'm a
Was
Civil
it?
War. Yes, I love the Civil War. I actually buy these CDs. You can just download them now, johntiller.com. You can fight any battle that was in the Civil War. You can be the North or the South. Naturally, I'm Robert E. Lee in most of them, Stonewall Jackson in some of them, Nathan Bedford Forrest, in some of them. But it's a lot of fun, and you control the entire army. I fought the Battle of Gettysburg a dozen different ways, a dozen different times, and I love it. It's very
That's
time
really
consuming.
interesting.
My wife comes in there and she's like, "Are you you playing your game again?" I'm like, "Baby, I'm doing research.
Okay.
I'm doing research here, so leave me alone."
Do you see a joystick?
No, it's just
That's
I had it
too
all.
funny.
But
Sometimes you get so engrossed, because I do that for research, and I do that. I've been getting back into acting recently with my agent, and researching lines, and my lines, some of my lines were fairly graphic, and I was walking down the street with my two dogs in my neighborhood, and one of my neighbors was going to come over and say, "Oh, I'm sorry." I'm like, "No, that's okay." And she said, "I thought you were on your phone." And I'm like, "No, I'm rehearsing my lines," but they're a little loud for the baby inside the house.
Yeah.
So we get really engrossed in what we do and forget about the outside world.
when you do, and it's hard, I had to buy me earphones because I love my beautiful wife, Kelly. If you're listening, baby,
Hey, Kelly.
but she will talk your ears off. And it's hard when you're trying to write a book and you're a character in 1863. You got to be there mentally. You got to have your brain there. It's hard enough to get there as it is. And when you're in the middle of that, and Kelly walks in and tells me she's fixing to do 15 different things, it just blows me away. So I bought me some really good earphones.
Yeah.
And I just kind of sit there, and if she does try to talk to me, I can ignore her because she don't think I can hear anything. I hope she's not listening. But anyway,
Just gave it away.
I'm in trouble now. But anyway, it's a lot of fun. It really is creating characters. It was fun one day. John called me one day. He had no idea we were writing.
Can we say hi to John?
Yes, John. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, buddy.
Wherever you at, whatever you're doing, I'm sure you're having fun there. But he called me one day, and we were shooting a bull. Had no idea we were writing a book, and initially we weren't trying to write a book. We were just kind of see if we could get something finished, and it ended up being pretty decent. But we were talking about it, but I asked him what he was doing. He said, "I'm writing." I said, "When you're writing," I said, "do you try to picture what your characters look like on the motion picture screen?" He said, "Absolutely. That's what I do." I'm like, "Okay." Put a note. So he had no idea what I was doing, but I wish you could have seen his face. I printed a copy off and flew up to Charlottesville to give it to him, and he had the funniest look on his face when I told him I'd written a book, because you could tell it was not something he ever expected in a million years. But
I bet he was pleased that it was something different than what he writes, though.
yeah, he stayed back away from it. I didn't want to use him to get. We didn't want to use him to get this thing done, so I think he picked up on that and didn't want to step in and say a whole lot about it. So he just kind of backed off and let the cards fall where they may. Unfortunately, the economy was tanking at the time. Our publisher was
That was a tough time.
blah 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 blah. It all went bad. But the only bright light I saw for a while is John's first publisher went book, and they only printed 5,000 copies. Well, our publishers printed 10,000 before they went broke. So at one point we were a little ahead of him, but it kind of blew up in our face.
And my publisher ran a scam.
Yeah, you got scammed.
Christian book and took my 3,000 and every other author. So it happens. Maybe it's good for us to learn lessons early on, and then it sets us to be a little bit more cautious down the road who we work with.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Life is nothing but a series of lessons learned. Hopefully.
I don't know if it's that box of chocolates they talk about.
No, it's not. It's not.
I think it would be something else.
I don't know. I'm still searching. Kelly and I are raising 2 babies now, so we're definitely in a new direction here. So I don't know. Who knows what the future holds?
Well, I think it holds big things.
I hope so.
I think that we're going to make something exciting happen, and I think we're talking about movies. I have a lot of contacts in the movie business now, and we're going to help you and David get that pushed forward. I know that Leonardo DiCaprio was looking at your book and before,
Yes.
and he really liked it, and there's a new project that you're writing. So I think that there's so many people out there in the world that are looking for content, and this is very different. Rory Feek, who was a guest on our show a couple years ago on the Nashville Film Festival, he was doing a show. Did I talk to you or talk to David about that? He wrote a show based in the Civil War era, and it's called Josephine, and now I think it's called Finding Josephine. And he came on not on our show, but we helped him promote it the night at the film festival, and that was 2 years ago, so it takes a while. But they'd already shot it, and it deals with a lady that her husband went off to Civil War, and she was in a cabin in the middle of nowhere, and she finally just had to find him. She cuts her hair off, she puts herself across as a man, and she goes to the war till she can find him. So, but now it's turned into a really big thing, and I see him promoting it like crazy. So I think people are interested in history.
Especially Southern people. Northern people could care less about the Civil War because they won. Southern people are still ticked off because we lost, I think.
Is that what it is?
I think so. We did a little book tour up in we went to Manhattan, caught a train to Connecticut and on to New Jersey, and was going to Borders bookstores. I was our publisher, and we'd have a little crowd sitting out there, and we'd start talking about the war, and I'd say something about blueberries, and I'm like, no offense, and they're like, what are you talking about? What's a blueberry?
They couldn't care.
They could care less about the Civil War. But, like I said, a lot of Southerners are still mad about it. John used to pick at me. I'd be talking about it, and John he would look at me and say, Mark, we lost. Give it up. We lost. I'm like, yeah, I know, but not on my computer. I'm undefeated.
So you're rewriting. I think it's really interesting the fact that if you think about people at that age as a teenager, and there's no internet, no telephone, basically no newspapers, no way that they can learn anything. And if you think about it with a group of people, and you're told who to go fight against, what to do, and all of a sudden, it's life or death, and you're put in a situation, you miss your family. Yeah. That had to be really tough. So the fact that all of that, they're dealing with that, and then they come back home, they're supposed to go back to normal. I think that's really tough on soldiers, even current soldiers today, to come back. So I think that your story will really, even current people that are coming back from war and having a tough time, and they're veterans, and yes, they're getting VA home loans for zero down, and yes, they're getting certain things, but you've got to get your mind
the
where it needs to be.
A lot of these soldiers slept on the ground for 3 or 4 years, and when they went back home after the war, they couldn't sleep in the bed. The wives are like, why don't you get in the bed? It was too soft and too comfortable.
That's something
you don't think about that kind of stuff, but I read stories about soldiers who couldn't sleep in the bed when they came home after the war. So, I don't know, it was crazy. Read stories of how they would sleep when they were cold. If they were marching in a bad time of the year and it was cold, they all had a rubber blanket, so they would put, one guy would take his rubber blanket and put it face down on the ground. Two guys would crawl on top of it and spoon and cuddle all night, and put the other rubber blanket on top of them to keep the rain off of them. Now, can you imagine cuddling up or spooning with someone?
I don't want to spoon or cuddle with
8 or 9 hours a night when they smell like death on the crack. I mean, they probably hadn't had a bath in a
Body
month.
heat's a real thing.
Golly, but that's how they survive, man.
So you really did a lot of research on things that nobody else would have thought of.
Well, a lot of it was just stories I read.
And David just told you what you need to change.
David asked me one time, when we first started, he said, now who won the Battle of Gettysburg? And I was like, oh, don't ever ask me that. Please, brother, I love you, but don't ever say that again in public. But we kind of got he don't know anything about the war. Most people don't. But they taught us
a lot of big words.
Yeah. They teach us a lot in high school, or some in high school, but not near enough.
Yeah.
And I think today they barely get a touch of what's going on.
And History Channel is one of my favorite channels on TV.
I love the History Channel.
We talked about that in YouTube and stuff. Well, man, thanks so much for coming in and being part of the day, and I appreciate everybody watching. Y'all be sure and share this video, and we're going to get you in contact with Mark and of course Mark and David and their page. And there's also the website where you can order the book. It'll be autographed. And also, if you want to have him on your TV show, radio show, Earl Farrell, I'm going to give you a call very soon. We're going to get this guy And Earl Farrell will have you on his radio show in Memphis. But you're going to be talking about food a lot because he used to own Sleep Out Louie's downtown.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I think he was part of TGI Fridays, some things on the Overton Square. So he and I were really close friends, and we talk all the time. And I love being on his show, and I'll do call-ins from here. So he'd be really interested to talk to you.
Sounds good.
All right, man. Well, thanks very much. We're going to give the South Haven handshake. Hi to everybody out there in South Haven. And
take care, everybody.
Thanks so much for watching. Y'all check these links and be sure and connect. We don't have a cameraman on site, so I'm going to do this, and you just close us out. Talk about whatever you want to.
All right, let's see. We do have another book that I wrote. It's kind of a version of a book David and I wrote ourselves. It's if I don't find a publisher, I'm going to self-publish. I think that's kind of the way to go now. So kind of keep your ears open for that one, and we'll keep everybody posted. And probably be another web page. So just anyway, thanks again for listening. Take care. Thank you, TJ. We'll talk to you soon.